Welcome back. The time is 17 minutes past 9, and you were tuned in to Salam Media, your home of humanitarian journalism with myself, Salailo Makwidiri. And the next topic that we'll be touching on is going to be a really, really interesting one. In the realm of espionage, you often expect the unexpected. But when thousands of pages and walkie-talkies exploded in unison across Lebanon this week, even seasoned observers were left stunned in an attack, I think, of what many of us would consider reminiscent of a high-tech thriller. Hezbollah's communication devices became ticking time bombs, killing dozens and injuring thousands. The question on everyone's lips right now: how did Israel, allegedly behind this, pull off such an audacious and synchronized strike? What does this mean for future warfare and intelligence operations? And to help us decode and understand further, the technical sophistication and I think the broader geopolitical implications of this unprecedented attack, I'm joined by a war correspondent, director for the Center for Foreign Policy Analysis, intelligence expert, and renowned author, Dr. Paul Moorcraft. Doc, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
Good morning to
you. I think, first and foremost, when everyone started to see the videos emerging, the pictures on social media, it was something that I think never seen before. From your observations, from what you have seen, what were some of the key takeouts that you have, picked up from this?
Well, first of all, it's not entirely unprecedented. The South African Defence Force attacked people in Mozambique, in Angola, using bombs and so forth, but nothing like this. The Russians also used to drop multiple bomblets called butterfly bombs, which I saw a lot of in Afghanistan in the 80s, and children used to pick them up, so blow their hands off, and I witnessed that a few times. So it's not and also I was with the Palestinians used to put booby traps in a lot of places. I was with the Palestine Liberation Organization in 2002 in Jenin, and a lot of the buildings were booby trapped. Luckily, I was with the PLO who put them there. So it's booby trapping is in some respects can be considered illegal under the laws of war. But this occasion is totally unprecedented in its scale. This is a massive attack in Lebanon. My own view is this is now a general view, but the idea that it was supposed to be timed with an assault, infantry assault, because 50,000 Israelis have had to move from the south, from the north to the south, and many in southern Lebanon had to move up north. So there's an idea that the Israelis want to end what's happening in Lebanon. They shifted from Gaza. The new phase of war, as the Israelis say, is in the north. So I think this was going to be a major assault along the lines of the 2006 war. But because they got wind, the Hezbollah intelligence got wind of it, they decided to use or lose it. So I think that's the situation. It was preparatory to an attack, either an attack by the Israelis or to stop a Hezbollah attack. So it's gone off at the wrong time in the wrong place, killed thousands of people, and it's a double tap. In other words, it's two different operations, 2 different days, and it's destroyed the morale of Hezbollah, and it's actually made the Israelis blind because they can't track what Hezbollah is doing because there aren't any, they can't monitor the phones, they can't monitor anything. So it is demoralized Hezbollah and it's remoralized Israel, but it's a step up, extra step. A lot of diplomats thought that this could be the running down of the war. There could be a ceasefire in Gaza, but this looks like an escalation.
And I think, for everyone, the sheer scale of this operation is one that is very, very, surprising. How plausible is it for intelligent, for intelligence services to tamper with thousands of devices, like we've seen here, and to go undetected for such a long time?
I think it was probably about 4 or 5 months that Hezbollah had the pages very old technology. You may not even remember the use of a pager. I'm much older and remember they were quite
Mm,
common in the 80s in the United States and still used in hospitals, particularly, for example, in Lebanon. They took over the whole control of the subsidiary. It's a Taiwanese company, apparently, and there's an Hungarian branch of it, or it's a franchise, but it's just a paper address. I would have thought a year or two. This has been planned for some years. The Israelis are highly organized. Their Mossad services are one of the best, although one of the worst, because they allowed the Hamas attack to happen almost a year ago now. So they must have bought the company, done it somewhere offshore, definitely, possibly in Hungary or possibly in somewhere like Cyprus, somewhere accessible to Lebanon, and then ship them in. And it's quite clever to have so many. The principle is straightforward: small military style explosives, and they can be set off by a signal, a text basically, and then they would. But to do it all at the same time, this is highly organized intelligence work.
mm,
And the Israelis haven't admitted to it, but they're the only ones with the capability and as an enemy of Hezbollah. I can't think of anybody else. Although there may have been some cooperation from some Lebanese, a lot of Lebanese don't like Hezbollah. Not only the religious side, a lot of Sunni don't like the Shia Hezbollah, and the fact that Hezbollah has taken over the whole country. So I don't think it would be difficult for the IDF to recruit some local Lebanese to help with the shipment. But the fact that they got to so many Hezbollah people in Syria as well, and in other countries. So it is a very impressive intelligence coup, double tap operation. And by double tap, I mean, for example, the Saudis do it in Yemen. They bomb the hell out of people in Yemen, the Houthis, and then just the next few hours, when possibly ambulances and rescue services go in, they attack again. That's a double tap. That's what it generally means, but it's being applied in Lebanon. It's a major attempt to destabilize Hezbollah. So what will they do? If you want to ask me, I'll try and tell you.
mm, mm, mm. I want to touch on something that you mentioned, the fact that Mossad hasn't necessarily taken responsibility of this, but in your view, does this fit with Israel's usual methods of covert warfare, and what message could they be sending to some of their other adversaries?
Yeah, it's a good question. They're trying to restore deterrence because Israel, although it's a superpower, a military superpower in the region, is also very vulnerable. And it's ironic that what was the weakest enemy of the Israeli Defense Force, that is Hamas, very weak compared to Hezbollah. Hezbollah's extremely well-trained militia, very, very effective fighters, trained well by the Iranians. And also they've got the element of faith. They believe in sacrifice and fighting. So Hezbollah is a very tough organization. It's one of the few times in the history of the Middle East that no white flags were flown when the Israelis went in 2006. They're a very effective organization. So the idea of using these attacks is supposed to reestablish an element of deterrence. Deterrence, Israel is supposed to be able to anticipate, which they didn't with Hamas. It was a terrible mistake because of overconfidence, hubris. They've been trying to restore deterrence since in the last year. And remember, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu's considered himself Mr. Security, but he's been undermined terribly. So the Israelis are trying to build up the fact that they are still a superpower. They're very effective. And they're showing that they're not using just conventional methods, because Ukraine has shown that this is a world of asymmetric warfare and using new technology, new techniques. So this is something new. So Israel is saying to Hezbollah, well, perhaps we don't want to fight you completely, but just please stop attacking northern Israel. Whether they can stop this war that's almost inevitably going to happen with the Lebanese. I would say it's 50-50, and this is ratcheted up 50-50. There could be a general war in the region, not just with Hamas, just with Hezbollah, but other states as well, and that would be disastrous. I don't know if the Western system can sustain two major wars. They've got a big war in Europe, and now there's a war in the Middle East. And if the Chinese decide to squeeze Taiwan, the whole international system will collapse. At the moment, we're teetering on the edge of an escalation. And go on.
No, I just want to touch just briefly on just generally the vulnerabilities of such communication devices and communication systems, and how could Hezbollah, one that you mentioned that have a really rich history of sophisticated warfare and sophisticated tactics, could have overlooked these security gaps within the communication devices themselves?
That's the key question, sir. Why did Hezbollah, who were very smart, very able, and they were trying to avoid this problem by switching from smartphones, because the Israelis were tracking, using GPS, tracking Hezbollah's use of these smartphones, as they did by killing the Hamas political leader, tracking his movements in Tehran, which was also a spectacular military and intelligence coup, killing the head of Hamas while he was a guest of the Iranians right in Tehran by putting a bomb in his rooms. Now that was tremendous intelligence operation, but what is tactically brilliant, but what is it going to achieve strategically? And to answer your specific question, Hezbollah were trying very hard to avoid the tracking. And that's why Hamas had in their tunnels system, used to have telephone systems, which were just literally old-fashioned telephone lines, like in this First World War. So the Israelis couldn't intercept the use of Wi-Fi or anything similar. So the Hamas had anticipated this, and this is what Hezbollah did. They thought, right, some of the operatives have been killed by being tracked by GPS. And because the system using page is very basic, it's just a one-way message system. It's used in hospitals, just saying, come into work, sort of thing, quite straightforward. But they hadn't anticipated that these could be grabbed, put a small amount of equivalent of Semtex in them, and a little square metal to make it look like a part of the system. Even if you open them up, you wouldn't see them. So, but Hezbollah did get wind of it, and that's the whole point. That's why it's happened in the last couple of days. They found out what was happening. Maybe they, grabbed hold of some of the Lebanese who were in Lebanon, who were helping possibly the Israelis. Because there's one thing in the intelligence world. The most important intelligence is not high tech; it's low tech. That's human intelligence. You need to know to talk to people who are on the ground who can see what's happening. And I think probably it was humans who were involved with using the Israeli design systems from Cyprus or wherever they came from. And they were on the ground, whether they were paid or they were just hostile to Hezbollah, we don't know. But Hezbollah found out, and that's what was beginning to be suspicious. So the Israelis said, right, we got this fabulous system, let's go for it, and let's catch up now and move a second division up to the northern Israeli border with Lebanon. And I think that's what basically happened.
And I know you touched this a bit, but how significant is this attack in terms of psychological impact and morale on Hezbollah and its supporters, especially after vowing that they would retaliate against Israel?
Well, every time there's an attack, they vow retaliation. And what the big thing in the Middle East, people seem to miss this, is not so much the 7th of October, the Hamas attack on Israel, killing about 1,300 people and taking 250 hostages. The most significant thing was that was October the 7th last year. The most significant factor in this series of tit-for-tat and escalation is April the 13th, when the Iranians, for the first time, They've been fighting a shadow war for 40 years. So the real war is between, I think, Iran and Israel, not with Hamas, not with the Palestinians. So the fact that the Iranians sent over 300 missiles, a direct attack in retaliation for an Israeli attack on embassy grounds in Syria, the fact that there were over 300 drones, missiles going into Israel, the Americans had 4 or 5 days notice of this. And what they did was they formed an alliance, not just with the usual suspects, France and Germany and Israel and American forces, but with Arabs, Arab intelligence services and air forces, Jordan, for example, Egypt, and a few others, and the Saudis helped. So there was this new alliance against Iran, because the real war in the Middle East is Iran, which is Shia, versus trying to get control in the Middle East, versus the vast majority of Muslims who are, of course, Sunni. So the fact that there was this new alliance, that gives me some hope, because I believe, I've just got a book out called Israel's Forever War, just out this week. Excuse me, plugging it. And that says that everybody said the two-state solution was a dead parrot, a zombie. And I believe it's not. I believe it can be revived. And the fact that these Arab states working with Israel and European states managed to resist and work together to make sure that not a single person was killed. A Bedouin child was injured in the April 13th attack, but nobody was killed. And this is, I think, hopeful for the future. The fact there can be cooperation in the Middle East to establish the Palestinians have to have their own state. Of course they do. And what is happening in Palestine is awful. I lived on the Gaza border for a while. I also lived on the Lebanese border in Baram for quite a while. These borders are very sensitive, obviously, and there has to be, unless there is a peace deal soon, there will be forever war. And some Israeli right-wingers want that, and some jihadists want that. But I believe that there can be a solution. And although it's very dangerous at the moment because the Lebanese escalation, call me naive, I think there can be a peaceful outcome.
No, definitely. And just lastly, before I let you go, Professor, I think this is a concern for many, civilians with technological advancements in espionage. Do you see a future where similar tactics could be applied to civilian infrastructure devices? I think everyone these days has, a phone, a laptop, or computer. Is this something plausible? Should people be wary?
I was trying to leave on a positive note, but you wouldn't let me. Okay, I'm going to be pessimistic again. AI is, I don't fully understand it, and I'm not sure many people do. But we're not going to see explosives, physical warfare, hardware. What we're going to see is obviously much more cyber warfare. And so how many of us have had our computers hacked, our bank accounts hacked? That is what is going to happen. You're going to have more and more cyber control, AI taking over. That is the issue, not bombs. It's going to be much more sophisticated than that. And the Russians and the Americans and the Chinese and the Israelis too are very advanced in AI. I don't think people around the world should worry about exploding phones. They should worry about their Alexas and Siris being taken over. That's much more of an issue.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Professor Paul Leslie Moorcraft coming to us live from London, War Correspondent, Director of Foreign Policy. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you.
There you have it there. Scary stuff happening, and advancement of technology, although that it's appreciated, love it, we can't live without our devices, but the danger that they pose are one that they seem to be increasingly by the day getting more and more dangerous. So it's going to be interesting times, and it'll be really interesting to see how Hezbollah themselves react or retaliate to something, as I mentioned, is reminiscent of a high-tech thriller, novel, movie, whatever you like, pages and walkie-talkies just exploding because someone somewhere, allegedly Israel's Mossad, pressed a button. Really scary stuff. News and Views continues after this short break.